Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had a great time in Florida last week at Live Oak, had great meetings there. Then we got to go over and see Lauren and Dave and Jude, our grandson. Sad not having him here to help me. He was such a great help last week. We're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord, and specifically the gathering of nations for the Ezekiel 38 war, because it's such a setup for what happens right after the rapture of the church, because the second coming has tons of signs, but the rapture is signless. So if we can look at kind of what happens right after the rapture, it really shows us how close we are. So many things keep happening. I really like all the animals involved. Ezekiel prophesied there'd be fish in the Dead Sea. The fish showed up this year. You had foxes on the Temple Mount about 6 weeks ago. That's Lamentations 5:18. Pretty amazing. So much stuff is happening that are literally the players for the Ezekiel 38 war, kind of laying their cards right out on the table. So let's pick up what's happened this last week. Last week we talked about the attack that Israel did on Iranian sections in Syria, and we usually shoot on Tuesday nights, but I shot Wednesday, so I was glad I got to see 12 different places were attacked, but they updated that and said that 16 were actually attacked. And Israel was so smart, they didn't hit the S-300 missile defense systems in Syria because they were manned by Russian troops. And it's pretty cool because that came back to bless Israel this last week. The U.S. and Russia and a couple other nations told Israel it's okay to go right on into Syria and take out things you need to take out. It's really crazy to see that approval coming. But so many things keep happening. You had missiles firing from Gaza. You had missiles firing into the Golan. After the ones in Gaza, you have the Palestinians declaring a day of rage because the United States talking about the settlements. It's so hilarious to hear them say that the settlements, they want to call it occupied territory. The U.S. came out last week so bold about, hey, Israel won it in the Six-Day War. It's Israel's land, too bad. So Palestinians are freaking out about that, but so much more is going on. Really, probably the intriguing thing is Iran. You had Iran's Revolutionary Guard general come out in a speech saying it's time for Iran to go on the offensive, kind of like they did in the Saudi Arabian oil fields. It is interesting that they chose that because they knew how America would react. The general came out basically saying it's going to hit American targets in the Middle East. This is so believable because the U.S. is really ready. You had General McKenzie, CENTCOM's general for the U.S., declaring last Saturday that Iran is literally building up forces to get ready to attack Israel and to attack forces in the Middle East that are by the U.S. In other words, our troops in the Middle East. To the point that we have the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln went through the strait there, and it's right up parked with its battle group parked right off the coast of Iran. It's interesting, while Iran's general and the Revolutionary Guard was saying those things, the crowd was shouting, "Death to Israel, death to the United States." They call Israel Satan and America the Great Satan. Think of that satanic thought pattern that those two nations that they just chanted about are both having their president and prime minister under attack from within. Those only two nations in the world that are having their president and prime ministers attacked from within, and that's what Iran's quoted. So see, it's a complete satanic thought pattern about the last days. It's wild that he's wanting to weaken, Lucifer wants to weaken the nations, but he can't. The King of Kings is about to come back. So you've got much more going on that the players are turning their chips over. I mean, you had Turkey testing their S-400 missile defense systems against American F-16s to make sure they were okay. These are very sophisticated missile defense systems. Thank God Israel has 4 different layers of missile defense systems. But you had Turkey, you had Egypt, and you had Iraq basically go... if you can call it this, come against the press. Turkey did years ago, but they were basically blacking out any information because it really looks like they're getting ready to be a part of the Ezekiel 38 war to attack Israel. You had Jordan this week talk about if Israel's not careful, they're not going to exist. It's weird hearing that from Jordan because they've kind of been Israel's friend for a while. This is all because of the pressure over the Temple Mount. It is amazing, just like when those UN nations, 154 of them said, we won't call the Temple Mount by its name, we'll call it by its Muslim name. So bizarre things are happening. I don't have time to get into all the anti-Semitic things that keep happening, but you had university students in Toronto come out yelling at Jewish people there, go back to your ovens. You had another set of campuses where crazy people were saying Heil Hitler to Jews. So that's just a couple of them. But you have the Pope even last week meeting up with an Islamic imam, trying to make sure there's a blending of these religions. So all these things that the Bible said you'd see, you're seeing it right in front of our eyes. I think the biggest thing is Israel getting ready to have to protect itself from Iran's strikes. You have in Israel, you have with Benjamin Netanyahu being indicted last week. The Attorney General finally came out this last week and said that the Prime Minister can stay in office. So you have a radical attack against Israel right when it's trying to be vulnerable on all different sides. But man, just watch. Israel's going to be okay. Israel's going to be fine. So pretty amazing the setup for the tribulation period. I hear so many people talking about the church has to go through the tribulation. We have to remember that God owes Israel back 7 years of Old Covenant time. Remember, Gabriel told Daniel, hey, God's given you guys another 490 years. But Jesus came after 483, exactly like Gabriel said, but God owes them 7 years of Old Covenant time. So he takes the church off the earth. And it's amazing that the church has so much authority that he has to take the church off the earth, repay them, so that Jesus can do just like Joseph. He's going to present himself to his brethren right here at the very end. So it's remarkable. The plan of God is so cool. But let's pick up with all the signs in the Scriptures. These are adamant. These are precise. These are amazing how they're in our face and so easy to get. Jesus said the generation that sees Israel made a nation of Jerusalem won back. He said that generation won't pass away till all is fulfilled. Then you had the Hebrew language restored. You had the Ethiopian Jews brought back. You had the fertility of the land of Israel. You had the revival of the Roman Empire. You have the Temple Mount Institute. You have 170 different species of predatory birds. We talked about the foxes. Foxes showed up on the Temple Mount. The Dead Sea having fish show up this year. Amazing. It is so cool to see all the flawless signs come together. The ones I like are the men we made lovers themselves. You have selfie sticks. My favorite's Aerosmith. Steven Tyler got born again. That's pretty cool. And Lenny Kravitz led him to the Lord. Now you have Kanye West having services with 50,000 people and even larger. So Jesus is just about to come back. It's not just that. It's the whole combination of what the Bible said you'd see right before the coming of the Lord. I hear people say, well, we've had those signs before. No, we've never had those signs before. I hear people say, why do we need to hear about end times? When you see the finish line, you run faster, not slower. The whole purpose is to have exaggerated, radical, great joy. I use this term, well, Colleen and I were getting married. Colleen wasn't walking down the aisle going, oh my God, I'm about to get married to that guy. No, she was expectant, she was excited, she was joyful. Jesus wants his church expectant, excited, and joyful. You go from the signs that you've had, but then you have signals. You have blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. Radical, 4 in a row. When's the last time you had 4 in a row? NASA called it a tetrad. The last time you had that was 1967 when Jerusalem was won back. 1948 when Israel was made a nation. Pretty crazy. 1492 when the Jews were kicked out of Spain, the edict of expulsion. After that, you had the Bethlehem Star. Amazing. This last year, first time in 2,000 years. At the birth of Jesus, the constellations were Virgo. This last year, they were Leo. He's the Lion of the tribe of Judah. After that, you had Mercury do a flyby of the sun. First time, you have about 5 times in a century, but it went down directly over the Temple Mount. The cool thing about that is Orion changed its instrument to hammer. The planets formed a sickle. The moon formed a sickle. You have hammer and sickle on the same day. That's Russia's symbol. God's showing Israel, you're getting ready to go through the threshing floor. Everything is about this 7-year period of radical pressure put on man, because the haughtiness of man, he won't make a decision until he has to. So we're so blessed to watch all this stuff come to pass right in front of our eyes, because we're about to see Jesus. So what do? Help our local church, help our local pastor, be more engaged. It's amazing that we're going to be here to see all of this. So we're so blessed because Jesus is just about to come back. Isn't that wild? We're going to go from faith to sight. Hey, if you're in Corbin, Kentucky this weekend, we'll be at Redemption Life Center, Sunday morning, 2 services, and Sunday night. If you can, get over there. I know it's right after Thanksgiving, but if you can, get over there. We'll have a great time. Hey, in the States, the United States, have a wonderful Thanksgiving tomorrow. Have a blessed time. And the rest of the world, have whatever you celebrate compared to Thanksgiving. Hey, we sure appreciate you tuning in. So much is happening, so exciting. Have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.